We're here at Kiln in downtown Salt Lake City talking to Banjo CEO Damien Patton. This was an unbelievable conversation. You're going to want to check it out. Please welcome Banjo CEO Damien Patton to the stage. So this company, they were actually just ranked the 4th best AI company in the world behind Microsoft, Amazon, and Google. This is an impressive monster company that I don't know very many of you have even heard about.
Try to keep it that way.
Intentionally, Damien does not like doing this. And so we're recording it, we're filming it, we're gonna make sure it's posted everywhere so that everybody knows everything about Banjo once we're done. What is Banjo? Let's start there, and then I wanna go all the way back to your, how you got to where you are. But first, tell everybody what Banjo is.
All right, good to be here, everybody. So Banjo, first of all, I started off with what we do, right? So we're a company that has a mission, not a mission statement like many companies have. We just have a mission, and it's to save human life and to reduce human suffering by using artificial intelligence and data only ethically and for good. And so what we've been able to do is we've become like the largest live data store of information in the world. What do I mean by that? How do I quantify that? So data such as the 911 phone calls that are emanating across this country, live satellite data, the cameras on the roadways like Department of Transportation, all these different types of live signals, anything that you could imagine literally comes into this hub of connectivity that we've built, this new type of distributed system that we invented that can truly understand the world of live, not real time. Real time is historical, right? Real time is, we wish it was live, but it's not truly live. We've built something that can understand the world of live when it's happening in that second, brings all this data in, uses artificial intelligence to understand what's happening in a video, what's happening in audio, what's happening in text, IoT devices, synthesizes it all together, all these signals that should have never been brought together before, brought together for the purposes of detecting an event. An event before you would otherwise know about it, before emergency responders would otherwise know about it, so they can come and save your life. So for example, the Las Vegas shooting. When the Las Vegas shooting happened and the guy fired the first bullet out of the Mandalay Bay Hotel, 12 seconds into the shooting, our system identified not only that there was a shooting, but where the shooter was. 12 seconds, right? Emergency responders weren't on the scene for many, many minutes after that. And so we see things like this that happen every single day, whether it's child abduction, whether it's the opioid crisis, the homeless crisis, all these types of things that are happening. Our system is able to unsilo this data from around the world that others have never had access to, synthesize it, understand it, and get it back out to the people that can make the biggest difference in your life, whether it's the hospital, whether it's an emergency responder, et cetera. And so every day that we come to work, we only have one KPI at our company, and that's lives saved. And so when you come to our office, and those of you who've come in and seen it, you've seen the power of what we do by synthesizing all this data and being able to alert people while it's still live long before, usually 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes before the rest of the world would even know something was happening. We're already operating in that dimension of time.
This could be one of the most important companies to ever come out of Utah for sure, maybe, and possibly one of the most important companies in the world. And so I guess the question that I have for you, and probably something you think a lot about, is how do you ensure that this technology is not used for evil?
Yeah, so it's actually the biggest thing I worry about every day because I know the power of what this does. And so first of all, you have to go back to when I started this company about 9 years ago. It was based on the fact that we would strip out all personal identifiable information. Back then, people just laughed at that. The big CEOs in Silicon Valley would ask me, why are you so worried about privacy? And I told them that one day there would be a tipping point and that we would have invaded people's privacies too much that no one would want to share data anymore, and then the restrictions would be too great. And so we patented the process. That's pretty widely known. We were the first to patent around stripping out personal identifiable information. So everything's anonymized. It can't be de-anonymized. And so everybody's data is protected. That's number one. Number two is I've put poison pills throughout the company that if something was to happen to me tomorrow and someone started using the technology other than to save your life or other than to reduce human suffering, the company would literally start imploding. Makes investors a little nervous, but they get that I started this for altruistic reasons. It's the only reason I'm in this. Sure, we have to make money, but this is not a mission of making money. It's a mission of truly building a generational company that's going to change the way that every single person in here makes a decision on a daily basis. And that's worth more than money, right? It's worth your life.
Tell everybody your story, like you were homeless. I don't know if that's breaking news, but like you were. Tell everybody like how your life started. Not from the very beginning, but from like 17.
I mean, we all have
old.
our stories. Everybody has a story. We're all unique. It's what makes us who we are. So I'm no different than anybody else. Just maybe had a different story. I was an abused kid growing up, and through that, I left home at an early age. When I say early age, like 13, was gone. Came back home for a little bit, but by the time I was 15, I was completely homeless and on the streets, living under the underpass of the 101 freeway and Highland Boulevard in Los Angeles, California during the 80s. No time's a great time to be homeless, but that was the height of the gang wars in LA. And I was homeless for years, many, many years. And when I mean homeless, taking the Domino's pizza that you guys were eating there, literally would go. The great thing, if anyone doesn't know and you ever get hungry and you're a little hard up for money, let me give you a small tip. When Domino's mismakes a pie, they put it in a box and they throw it in the dumpster. Brand new, nothing wrong with it. Someone just put on green peppers when they weren't supposed to. So every day I would go to Domino's, that's probably why I'm so fat, and I would sit behind there and I would dumpster dive in Domino's, and then when they were out, then I would go borrow the ketchup packets from McDonald's. But anyways, you know, not an easy way to grow up, especially on the streets of LA during that time. Most of my friends, if you call them friends, acquaintances, were either dead or going to jail. I decided I didn't want either one of those, and I walked into a military processing center. And literally, they took me that day, and I went off to war, went over to the Middle East and fought 2 tours in the Gulf. And then coming back from that, I spent about 7 years in NASCAR as chief mechanic of one of the top racing teams.
Wait. Tell everybody how you got.
We don't have time for storytelling all day long.
Who wants to hear how we became a chief mechanic at NASCAR? This shows like the type of entrepreneur and type of person you are. Like, how did you become a chief mechanic at NASCAR?
So when I was overseas, fighting over in war, they have something called Armed Services TV, and they'll show like a television program, and they showed a NASCAR race. And I was fascinated by how these cars are going around a track at 200 miles an hour, but they come in for these pit stops, and then they're just there for seconds. And in seconds, they change tires, they fuel it, they fix the car, and then if they do the right thing compared to the other 40 some people on the track, they can win a massive amount of money. And I was so fascinated by how everything was so fast, split seconds. They had to make all these decisions. So I literally wrote a letter to one of the most famous people in NASCAR. And during that time, for those of you that were, many of you are young, you weren't alive back then, or don't remember back then, but people were tying yellow ribbons around the trees for those of us that were overseas. So they replied back to me, this NASCAR owner replied back to me and said, hey, when you're done fighting, we got a job for you. And I'll spare you all the details of how I learned mechanics because I knew nothing, right? But I figured it out, got a job there, and then rose through the ranks of it. And it was pretty great because I didn't have a high school education, right? And so I was making well into 6 figures, and this was a long time ago, which today would be a lot of money, working in a professional sport like NASCAR. And then that is what enabled me to go to college later on, and I got out of college debt-free only because it wasn't the military paid for. I think my GI Bill back then was like 15 grand or 30 grand or something. But because I was in NASCAR and I was able to make so much money at such an early age, especially someone who never came from money, I didn't understand money, but to come out of college debt-free really has set me up through life. And so I empathize and sympathize with those that come out of college with a lot of debt. Because I can see the trade-offs and decision-making that they're having to make, and I was just fortunate I didn't have to make that. And then we'll just skip past NASCAR, and then I went into law enforcement because I decided to, maybe my days on the street, I wanted to see what the other side of the law was like. So I did that for a little bit because I wanted to see, and then I realized it's hard to make a living doing that, and then so I decided to go back to grad school and college and got into the tech world, and I've been there ever since.
So let's talk about how you got into the tech world, because that's an interesting story as well. Doesn't your wife submit an application for a Google Hackathon on your behalf, and tell that story.
We blame my wife for everything. So I'd started and built a company, not in the tech industry, in the construction industry. And I just was taking some time off. I was probably in my early 30s then. And my wife said, hey, I entered you in Google's annual Hackfest, where they invite, you guys have seen it, 300 or 400 engineers or whatever it is, and they give them a hard problem to solve. And then they have a panel of Google executives and I think some venture capitalists. They judge you on the outcome of that. And so my wife said she entered me in it, and I said, well, I'm not going to that. And long story short, she's very persuasive. But I had missed the last flight out, and it's a 9-hour drive from where we lived at the time was Las Vegas up to Silicon Valley. And so I got in my car that night and drove all night and ended up at Google in the morning. And I don't know that I've ever told this story publicly, but I'll give you the color of how we actually got in the contest outside of that. So what they do is when you get there, you go into teams to solve a problem, except you get to lead your team if you come up with one of the ideas that they choose. And it's a bunch of, and we're going to talk about diversity maybe in a minute, but it's a bunch of guys, let's just be honest, in Silicon Valley. It's just guy engineers, right? And Google executives and others that are picking these ideas that you're going to do. So I called my wife up and I said, guess what? You're going to get up here and you're going to present the idea, because they're not going to be able to help themselves and they're going to pick you. And so it's just true. And so she came in and she literally pitched the idea. Big surprise, they chose her as one of the ideas that they wanted to see happen. And then long story short, we won that contest, and by winning that, there were VCs in the room, and we literally got term sheets. I mean, it may not have been that day, it felt like that day, but before I left Silicon Valley, we were funded, and that seems like a long time ago now. Yeah. It's almost 9 years ago now, but that's how it started.
How do you think about raising money now? I'm sure there's a lot of people in here who, either are investors or, they're raising money as entrepreneurs or thinking about raising money. What advice do you have for those, trying to raise money, and the best way to do it? And the best way to keep control of your company, which you have some interesting thoughts on.
Yeah, so for me, raising money is all about keeping control of your idea. Probably the biggest mistake that I've ever made, maybe in life, and I'd have to think about that, but certainly in my business life, was that I didn't follow my gut and didn't follow what I wanted to do, right? Because I got caught up, once I got funded in Silicon Valley and we started building something, it was in the time when mobile apps were just getting ready to get big. They hadn't yet. And we had invented something. It was kind of like the first ephemeral app. It's kind of like Snap, long before Snap. But I hated it. But because everybody was so hyped about it, so excited, it was built. It was literally ready to go into the App Store. And I walked in, it was the hardest meeting I've ever had in my life. I walked into our board, I walked in, got all of our investors who had invested at that time quite a bit of money in me, and I'd spent quite a bit of money building this. And I told them, I'm not in love with what I've built. I don't want to build it anymore. I'm firing the entire company and I'm shutting it down. I'm throwing away all of it today. And the room was about as quiet as this room was. They were like, we were taking a risk investing in that guy. Maybe it's not the risk we wanted to take. So the investors now call it the famous walkabout. I left, I literally shut down the company. I got rid of everybody except for the first engineering hire I ever made, who's still with me to this day, 9 years later, and my wife. They were the only two people in the company that survived. And I literally threw away the entire code base, and it was literally ready to ship to the store that day. And I still believe it would be a great app today. It was just something I could care less about. And so I went away for 3 days. I rented a house on the beach, because that's my thinking area. It was a secluded cove where no one else could get into. And I sat there for 3 days. I didn't sleep for a single minute. And it just poured out of me what I wanted to do. And 6 weeks later, in the App Store, launched what people know today was the first iteration of Banjo, which at the time was getting more downloads social app than any other social app was. It was crazy. We've since obviously departed from that world, but the point I'm trying to make about raising money there is you have to stay true to yourself. And the reason I was able to make that decision at the time is I had control. And now we've, raised a lot of money and raising a lot more. And we still have full control, meaning I still have full control of the company, which is unusual, right? For me to control the board at this point. But it's critical and it's important because it's my vision at the end of the day. Other people, other men and women are quitting their jobs to come on the vision that I have to save these people's lives and reduce human suffering. And I'm not going to let it be derailed by somebody else, investors or anybody else. And that's hard. And in order to keep control, you have to create leverage. And what leverage means is, I always say one buyer is no buyer. If you're going and you're talking to one VC and you're really excited about them, make sure you're picking them for the right reasons. It's about partnership. The VCs I have are amazing. I know Peter was just up here talking about one of them that we have, NEA, Scott Sindell. Amazing. John Malloy, right? First board member that backed companies like PayPal and Waze. One of the most amazing human beings in my life, not only as our VC, but as a mentor to me as well. It was about going back and picking the right people. And when I didn't have the right people, it was about making sure we got rid of them, right? And just got rid of the distractions. But raising money is, it's been fairly easy for us, which I know it sucks to hear because I know how hard raising money can be from watching people do it. And we've just been fortunate that we don't have to build decks. And I don't go out pitching and raising money. We've been lucky enough that it comes to us. In all the instances I just gave you, whether it's a SoftBank or an NEA, as they found us and they came to us and were so excited and interested, and they were the right partners at the time. And I'm grateful for that. But I do talk to a lot of my friends and I help them get through the fundraising, but mostly around keeping control of their company, negotiating through that and how you negotiate. So for those of you who are raising money or are gonna go raise money, I'm here in Utah, I'm local, I live in Park City, and I'm willing to sit down with each and every one of you and just walk through the mechanics of how you do it. And I know some of the investors that are in here are gonna hate me for it. But I can show you how to get leverage and how for sure to keep control of your company and how to play one of the investors off the other to ensure that you're gonna get what you want. And it's not about maximizing dollars, and I don't play that game. And my investors would tell you that I don't sit there and negotiate with them until they feel they've lost, right? I make it so they feel like they've won. They've got a great deal, because it's a long-term partnership with your investor, right? You have to think of it that way. You're trying to worry about maximizing maybe valuation. Valuation is all just a bunch of BS anyways, right? It's like saying you own a really expensive house. The only time that matters is when you sell it and you realize the cash. Saying you have $1 billion company and a unicorn, to me, is just all hype and nonsense. It's not reality, right? So don't worry about maximizing. If your company's value, whether you go IPO or whether you sell your company, you're gonna realize the value when you sell it. Don't try to mug your investors over it, because that's starting off on a bad foot, so I don't do that. That's not about keeping control. Control is about keeping control of your vision and making sure you get to do things the way you want to do things. Now, of course, you have to do things legitimately, legally, and you have to make sure that you're obviously building a profitable company. But as long as you do those things, you should be able to follow your vision and what you're passionate about and keep control of that. And so, to me, those are the things I would share with you of how do you keep control of your passion to make sure you see things through the way you want to and not feeling the pressure to change. You might feel the pressure to get off your ass and get going, and they should. That's what investors are good for and what a board's good for, but not the pressure to change what you wanted to do, why you're doing this in the first place. Because at the end of the day, the investors aren't the one operating your company, you are. It's your blood, sweat, tears. It's every man and woman that's giving up their personal time and has quit their job to come on your vision, right? You did that. You convinced them to do that. And you have a responsibility to them to stay on your vision and not zigzag whichever way the wind flows because investors want you to go one way or another.
You say investors found you, but you're pretty hard to find.
Yeah.
Like, there's not even a sign on your door in Park City in your office. Nobody would really even know where you are, right? When I went to your office the first time, I went, where is this place? Even when I was
there is a sign. It just says it's a doctor's office.
Is there? Yeah,
right?
That's exactly.
So there is a sign.
It's really crazy. So how do they find you?
Yeah, and I don't think anybody here knows. We have a fairly large office right somewhere nearby here, and there's no sign on it. No one knows we're there. I don't think any of you probably know where we're at or know that we even have an office there. We just announced 2 weeks ago on stage at the Governor's Economic Summit. I was on with Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox, and I told him, hey, we're hiring another 100 people right now. And I don't mean this year, I mean like right now. And in fact, we were just talking with the owner of Kiln, which is, by the way, is this not one of the most beautiful spaces you've ever been in, right? Let's give it up for that. It's amazing. But what I was telling him is I said, hey, we just leased a new space down here to put another 50 people in, and that was less than 60 days ago. And then I just said, you know what, I'm gonna hire another 100 people in Utah right now. Because the amount of, not just Utah and the amount of business we're getting out of Utah, but globally now for saving lives is really called on so many people to want to come work for us that we're just outgrowing our spaces. And so people find us, the investors find us. I mean, one way they find us is, even though I don't go out and speak a lot, actually me speaking at Silicon Slopes this year, I was shocked at how many people globally came out after that saying, are you raising a round? And I said, no. We have plenty of cash in the bank. But then, people came and it was just the right time. And so we decided to go forward with it. But we stay quiet for different reasons. It's like people say, well, why are you staying quiet? Are you stealth? No, Clint will tell you, I'm about as transparent as it gets. You want to know how our tech works? I don't hide it, right? Like, come on and see it. I'll show you how the sausage is made. The reason I keep quiet is I don't want distractions in my life, right? My entire life has been dedicated now to saving human life and changing the way that we all make decisions. And because of that, I don't want all the noise that comes with media and hype and nonsense. And that's why we stay low key. But I'll tell you, every one of you can know where our offices are and come visit our offices. You just have to sign a security agreement when you come in because of some of the data feeds we have that are showing. But outside of that, we're very open and transparent. We just do it for lack of distraction and keeping focused. I don't want our team, worried about or thinking about like, hey, we're going to get out and do a big article about how now we're worth, unicorn status and all that. That's not the right focus. That's not going to get you anything at the end of the day, right? And so that's not why we all sacrificed everything of what we're doing, was so that we could brag about ourselves. And that's why we stay low key. Plus, I'm a very private person, as you know, so it's easy for me to stay hidden, but that's why the company does it.
And what I'm good at is media, hype, and nonsense.
We know. That's why I stay away from you.
So thanks for coming here today. How did you get to Utah? Because you're not from here. You were living in Las Vegas. That's an interesting story, how you even ended up here.
Again, we blame my wife,
Huh.
right? So, true story, we were splitting our time between Vegas. Vegas has zero tax rate for you entrepreneurs that need to understand that. And so when you sell your company, Vegas is not a horrible place to have a domicile. But we were splitting our time between Silicon Valley and Las Vegas. And my wife came to me one day in Silicon Valley and says, we both don't really care for it here. And I said, sure. And she said, so we're moving, like back to Vegas full time? No, I hate Vegas too. It's hot, it's dry, it's nonsense. We're out of there too. Well, wait a minute. We have a company here. Like, where are we going? And she says, you can commute. And, okay. And I said, so where are we going? And I kid you not, this is the exact conversation. She says, we're going to Park City. And I said, Utah? I don't think so. Obviously, just like the Google Hackathon, I lost out on that as well. I said, fine. Go lease a house in Park City. I'd only been there, I think, once before in my life. Go lease a house, try it out for a year. I'll fly in when I can and see if you like it. So she said, great news. So she came to lease a house. Next thing I know, I'm being asked to wire transfer a bunch of money because we bought 40 acres and we're building this retirement home on in Park City on the mountain. And anyway, so we went at that. So I came here and the investors were like, well, wait a minute, whoa. You're not going to be living in Silicon Valley anymore? And I said, no. I'm just going to, that's where my pillow's going to be, but I'll be on the plane, right? It's a simple flight on Delta out of the airport. That lasted about a month, and I was like, okay, commuting sucks. I just went to the board. I'm only going to hire 3 people in Utah. This is about 18 months ago. Only going to hire 3. And they're just going to help support me so I don't have to fly every day. And 3, then became 30, and then I just announced with Spencer, the other Lieutenant Governor, I told him we'll move the headquarters here in Q3. That doesn't mean we won't have a Silicon Valley company presence. because we have a Washington, D.C. and Vegas, and we're opening up 2 other offices in the United States by the end of the year. But our global headquarters will now be in Utah, and all the executive staff will be relocating to Utah.
And how has recruiting gone? Because most of the people that you on your executive team are also not from here. So how have you managed to recruit them here?
Yeah, so like the other day when we announced we're going to hire 100 people, that's what every recruiter that's called me says, how are you going to hire all these people? About 60 to 70% right now are coming from out of state, which is not great. And the reason it is number one is just the pool here of people to pick from, as you guys know, is very tight. We also are not very loud about recruiting here. We're not very loud about advertising, so no one knows about us, so that's harder. So just as easy as it is for us to hire from Utah, it's as easy as for us to hire from out of Utah, where the pool's a lot deeper, and helps with a lot of other things, including diversity, which we can talk about. So for us, I mean, I don't know, how do we hire? Like word of mouth. I mean, that's it. I mean, I'm telling people right now, we're hiring 100 more people right now, and I've been shocked. We just got a really good VP of engineering from Utah, really good, amazing, and he's only been there, like, this is his second week. And I've already said, okay, you're going to take over this entire part of the company. Like, I saw that right away, how good he was. And then right away, he's got people that want to follow him from other Utah companies, and they're really good too. And then it brings some pressure. I mean, like Clint said when we got here, we've just named the 4th best AI company in the world, only behind those giants. And people were like, you should be really proud of that. And I'm like, no, I think we're better than them. I honestly do. And that's hard to find the talent here, not because Utah is not talented, because it is. One reason I'm here. But we're not, in Utah still, we're not really doing a lot of bleeding edge technology, right? And that's things that we want to help foster in Utah, that I want to help foster in Utah, so that we have a deeper pool, not just around AI and machine learning, but just the things that are going to truly disrupt. We see a lot of that. It comes still out of Silicon Valley. Well, I don't want it to come out of Silicon Valley. I want it to come out of Utah. And so how do we change that dynamic so that more bleeding edge technology is born, raised here? Well, you got to have your talent pool here, which means you got to have diversity here. And these are all challenges for Utah that we've got to solve together, right? It doesn't take me to solve it. It's all of us coming together to solve it. But the biggest thing is I get on and I say, listen, if you want to wake up every morning and you hear about a child being kidnapped and you're going to save that child's life, I mean, that's what we do, right? The first call I got, unfortunately, for the Logan, the poor girl in Logan, I was woke up in the middle of the night by law enforcement, and Logan is not a territory that we have yet. I think that's going to change now, Cache County. But they woke me up, all law enforcement. I got calls from the FBI, Homeland Security, the Attorney General's investigators. Can you help us find this girl? Because that's what they know that we do in the areas that we work in. And that's when you come to work every day and you're working on solving the opioid crisis or the homeless crisis, or you're working on saving children's lives and working in human trafficking to eradicate that from this planet. The work is so rewarding that's why people come. That's why all these executives have left places like some of the top people out of Disney and stuff have left and moved their families, taken massive salary cuts, from working in the Silicon Valleys or in the LAs or the New Yorks, and come to Utah with their families because it's mission.
How do you make money? And let me set that up a little bit differently. You sell into like governments, like state governments, national government, local governments, local sheriff's offices. You explained, I think, like DEA. What's that process like?
Yeah, so people all the time, they think, oh, you work with government, it's scary. Yeah, it is. That's why I didn't want to do it in the beginning, and I refused to do it for a long time. And how we make money, I mean, it's not much different than other SaaS-like companies that were selling a service. It's just a very different service. It's a radical transformation for these government agencies, but we work from federal, state, county, local, but private companies like hospitals and schools for keeping kids safe. All of those types of entities is who we work with. But as far as making money, it's, again, just like with VCs, how I'm not trying to maximize things, valuation and stuff with them so they feel like they've lost out. I also don't try to maximize profit with and money, if you will, with a customer. And I know that sounds crazy, but hear me out for a second. It's about the long-term relationship. And if our mission is about saving lives, the barrier to save someone's lives, the barriers and why we haven't solved homeless crisis in this state, the barrier to why the opioid crisis is growing and not shrinking no matter how much money we throw after it, is because we're doing things in the same way, right? We're not really doing anything new. And the old way, obviously it doesn't work. And so it takes all of us to come together to figure out how we're going to do things radically different and then unsilo that data so that we can get to it. But if I go into a place and I say to them, first of all, unsiloing their data is already a challenge as it is. And once we get over that hurdle, the next hurdle is money. And if you're trying to maximize dollars and you're putting process and a length of time in that process, if you will, before you can actually implement, how many people are going to die? How many people's lives are going to be ruined forever and they're going to suffer because I'm trying to maximize profit somewhere? So we just don't do it. That doesn't mean we don't make money, because we do, but I don't go in trying to jam somebody. So people are always blown away by how big we are when they come see us. Like Clint says, first time he came in, no one realizes how big we are and how big of a footprint we have, how many important governments work with us and leaders work with us. But we do not have a single salesperson in our company, not one. We don't have marketing people in our company, obviously. But people think then, how in the world do you make money? Because when you're doing the right thing and they're getting tremendous value, the money comes. And maybe you're not jamming them up front, right? But you're getting something for the long term, and that long term will beat anybody who went and tried to jam them with software or anything up front, and then it gives them a little bit of a sour taste. Work for someone for the long term, and then they just start giving you everything. What I mean by that is we go in and sell them, let's say, 3 different data types we're going to work with. And the same company, a company would come along and do the same thing. 5 years later, they're still working with those 3 data types. 5 years later, we have 300 data types from them because of how we've lowered that barrier, the money barrier to them, the ability to get things done, meeting their mission. And that's the most important thing I tell entrepreneurs. Stop trying to sell yourself into them. Meet their mission. Find out what their mission is, and you pander, you cater to that, and you will get the deal every single time.
What's the most insane pinch yourself meeting that you've been in that you can talk about? So I know there's probably a few you can't, but like you're in a tell me the most insane pinch yourself. I can't believe I'm in this meeting right now.
It was early on, and so I know who a lot of the people who come to Utah to see me on a daily basis, and so I'm not going to talk about them. But early on in my career at Banjo, I was a nobody in Silicon Valley. I'm still a nobody, but I was a nobody in Silicon Valley. And Zuck came to meet with me. And at the time, getting access to a lot of the things from Facebook was so critical to our business. It no longer is, but it was at the time. And for him to come and spend the time that he did, and not only that, what we were able to come up with and do together was really made a big difference in Banjo at the time. And so I wasn't starstruck. I'm never starstruck by anybody, but I was saying to myself when I was in that meeting negotiating with him about doing something, I was like, we were such a young company, it's like, this is crazy where we've come. Now I look at it too, when we have global leaders that fly in to see me on a regular basis here, and I'm negotiating some pretty tough topics for world peace. That gives me pause a lot, but I think it's become a little bit normal now, which is kind of sad for me, that I don't know that I even recognize it anymore. My team recognizes it. Someone just said this morning, we were leaving our office, and a group of people were leaving, and they said, that was so-and-so, like, what are they doing in Utah? And I said, they just needed something really quick, and they were shocked that they were here, and I said, yeah, it's probably why you see the Secret Service running around all the time, right? So, but in any event, yeah, I think as an entrepreneur, though, don't get starstruck by anything. People are people, right? I mean, it's cool sometimes to meet people because they have an experience you can glean from, but no one's more important than anybody else. And it took me a while in life to learn that, and I'm glad I have now. But I still see a lot of entrepreneurs, like it's all about name recognition for them, and to me that's sad because at the end of the day, that's not going to get you further ahead in life.
Do you ever have to wear a suit? I don't know if I've ever seen you in a suit.
You know, the other day at the governor's economic thing, I told him I put on a jacket, so I put on a digital camouflage jacket over my T-shirt. So I don't think so. I don't think I ever wear a suit.
That's awesome. That's how you know you're living right. All right, raise your hand if you have a question. Yeah, right here. So the question for the camera is, what's the difference between you and the NSA?
Yeah, so the NSA is exploiting your data, right, for a lot of reasons. Some to protect us, others for surveillance. So by our mandate and what we do, we would never use, well, first of all, we don't have your personal identifiable information. We don't even know who a human being is in our system, right? I mean, truly it's stripped out. We just know something is happening, we don't know the who, right? We know where it's happening, we don't know the who. That's one. Number two is we have mandates in our company. I won't allow our team to use anything that creates personal identifiable information. So we cannot use facial recognition. Anything that will classify people by race, gender, or identify them by their face that creates PII, we won't let you use that. Plus, the NSA's mission is very different than ours. Like, if you come to our shop, like, all we're doing is eradicating child sex trafficking, eradicating the opioids. Theirs is all about surveillance. We don't use it. There's no surveillance going on at all. It's actually impossible in our system. It feels like the NSA, in a sense, when I talk about it, I could see that, and it feels like Minority Report. And when you come see it, as you have, and you see it live, right, it's hard to unsee it. And you can't explain it. Like, sitting here, as much as I talked to Clint before, and then when he came there, he's like, now I get it. But right, it's like there's none of that going on.
So the question, just for the camera here, is about other use cases outside of the ones that you've mentioned so far.
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, so I talked about opioids and the homeless crisis. We just were on stage 3 weeks ago with the governor of California, announcing what we're doing there and helping detect wildfires while they're still the size of a campfire before they get out of control and the loss of property and human life like we had in California last year. So we're doing a lot of things around that. I know we're going to run out of time, so I'd love to tell you more about what we're doing around homelessness. It's radically different. What we're doing to stop recidivism meaning the rate of people that are homeless, maybe addicted, that are going to jail, and you see them going to jail 30, 40 times a year, but they're back out on the streets, maybe sometimes doing petty crimes. How do we stop recidivism? And so we have programs now and that using unsiloing all this data with counties and cities, where we're now measuring the actual recidivism rate dropping by changing the behavior of what law enforcement and others are doing in a radically different way than they were doing before. But why? We're meeting their mission. Their mission is something different, but by meeting their mission, we're able to truly change things like recidivism. I could go on and on. I mean, there's literally probably hundreds, if not thousands, of use cases now of different things around saving a human life or reducing human suffering. It's such a massive topic. For me, my passion project, just based on my own life, is around anything to do with the harm of a child. And so I focus my personal attention. I have my own CEO team, if you will, that focuses on anything to do with child safety, opioid crisis, and the homeless crisis. So those three things live in my bucket, where the rest of the company deals with everything else. And there's a lot of everything else. That's a great question. So how are we hiring at Banjo so quickly, and how are we aligning people's accountability to our mission? So I know this will sound crazy, but I am crazy. And so I still interview just about every single person that walks in the door, literally. And the reason I interview you, because I can tell whether or not you're coming here for mission or some other purpose. And I don't always get it right? I fail at things too, but I get it right more often than not. And that's not scalable for me to always interview people, but it's a priority of mine. And if it's a priority of mine, then it's going to continue to happen well into the hundreds, if not more, of people. That's just a reality. That's how critical it is for us to get it right. And like I said, I don't always get it right. And I'm the first to admit it when I don't get it right, and I take care of that. The second part is, like, how do we onboard people so fast? So again, it's different when you come to Banjo, because our technology, for those of you who are engineers and stuff, you just will never have seen anything like it before. Most of it was developed in-house, right? Because there's nobody else, the Amazons, the Microsofts, they can't do anything live on the stream. So all of that's homegrown technology. And the only way to get people to learn it and onboard people as fast as I throw them into the deep end, pretty much day one, you're pushing to production, and it's pretty scary. But you get over that really quick and you get immersed, and then you see that something you built today saved that person's life tomorrow. And once they see that circle once, it's like an addiction, honestly. A good addiction, right? And that we're actually giving back to humanity every day. We're not just not building another application. And so we have a different, but again, growing fast like this, it's hard. We just took this office a couple months ago for these 50 people, and I started questioning, should we even move into it now? Because it's not even big enough for our growth for the next couple of months. And I'm just talking about the 100 people we're hiring now. I don't know what we're gonna hire by the end of the year or next year. I just know, I can only see that's our immediate need today here in Utah, not including all the other offices, including the new offices that we're opening. But onboarding is tough, scaling is tough. I'm not a master at scaling, for sure not. I'm learning as I go, right? Painting the airplane while it's flying. We're doing a pretty good job, but we could always do better. That's why I take a lot of mentors. That's why some of the new investors I took, it was all about how did you scale these companies from the hundreds to the thousands in the time that you did? Because I don't have time to learn and make mistakes. I need to learn from the people who have already made those mistakes in the past. So it's about listening. How do we protect the technology is basically the theme of your question. And so how we do it. Number one is, like I said, I put poison pills throughout the company. And let me tell you one poison pill. Just as we've gone viral in a network effect of getting customers. Again, we have no salespeople, but we have literally years of inbound business at our desk right now. And so just as we went viral, if you will, from a network effect of people talking from one government agency or one hospital to another of how successful it was, and that's how we became viral in that. Imagine today, what I've done is every single source of data. So let me give you an idea of source of data. A source of data, just all of Twitter would be one source of data. All the public cameras in Utah, Department of Transportation, is another source of data. And you could say entire companies have been built over each one of those pieces of data. That's only two sources. Today we have over 13,000 live sources of data of that magnitude. And each one of them has a master control switch to turn us off at any time for doing anything wrong. And again, what most companies don't allow them to do, we have our customers come and audit us. What are we using their data for? What kind of queries are going against it? How are customers using it? What kind of queries are they using it for? And again, can shut us off at any time. Imagine if someone shut us off today because we were doing something bad. Just as fast as we went viral in a good way, we would go viral in a bad way. And that's a poison pill to protect the company because our company doesn't control the data. The customers control the data. And I write it into the agreements that we cannot use their data for marketing, advertising, inference, all these different things. They don't ask for that. I write it in there to ensure that if something was ever to happen to me, there's no way that people's data could be exploited against them in the future, and the only way this technology could be used would be for good. The second part of your question is, how does the customer get it? It is controlled by us. It's controlled by us because we need to make sure that on the other end, that we're sending them a signal, we're not letting them query us. And to ensure that they're not using it for any purpose that would be of wrongdoing. Not saying they would, but you can justify things with your mind and your heart all the time. Oh, just this one time we're gonna do it to save this person's life. Boom, slippery slope. Next thing you know, you have Facebook on your hands. Yeah, what can Utah do as a community to help us more? And thanks for that question. I made this comment on the stage at Silicon Slopes, right? And the comment was, I've lived a lot of places in my life, right? Both through the military, NASCAR, whatever. As an entrepreneur, I've never been accepted more in any place than I've been accepted in Utah. And that's a fact. And that's amazing. It's an amazing feeling for someone like me because I've been an outcast my whole life, right? Starting off with abuse, you feel like an outcast. And homelessness, you feel like an outcast, and on and on. And so everybody has been amazing in Utah. And I mean, everybody might be an exaggeration, but pretty much everybody. The government here in Utah, holy moly. And I work with a lot of governments, as you know. And Utah government has been so welcoming and willing to look at things that are not comfortable for them to look at when I bring up. And so for how the community can help, I mean, I don't necessarily want to say the community to help Banjo. I need the community to help build the community, a community of diversity. so that we can get more engineers, we can get more businesses to come to Utah, to want to prosper in Utah and see what I've seen. Today, when I tell people to come to Utah, I'm met with exactly what I told my wife. Utah? No way. But when we get them here and they see the quality of life, they see the compassion, they see your passion for what you're doing and the companies that are being healed, they're blown away. Everybody's blown away. But the word is not out. Throwing up some billboards on the 101 in California that says life elevated is not going to do it. Right? And so what we can do as a community to help bring more talent, not for Banjo, for all of us, for all the entrepreneurs in here that want to build their future company here in Utah and be successful, they need the talent. The only way we can do it is we have to start not by saying we need to hire people, not hire people in diversity maybe to check a box, but to build a community. Build a diverse community in Utah that when people come here, they understand it's welcoming of everybody, because it is. It's just that people haven't seen it yet. And it requires all of us to get out there and do it. Not just me out there on a microphone on a stage telling people. That's just another talking head. We need everybody in this room and all the people you know to really start getting the word out about how amazing Utah is and why. Not just because we have a couple of unicorn companies. That's just numbers. Utah is amazing for all the intangibles, all the reasons that I feel good, all the reasons that I've decided from not wanting to even move here 2 years ago to truly moving our headquarters here and building our business here, and my wife and I truly building what she calls our retirement home, where we're going to be forever here, right? That's what Utah got out of me in a very short amount of time. And I know that's what Utah can get out of everybody. It just requires them to come here and experience it for themselves. And that's what Utah can do. That's what you can do, right? To help all of us.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Banjo CEO Damien Patton.